Greetings, friends, starseeds, walk-ins, and earthlings. So, I have an interesting video in mind today. The topic is about walk-in symptoms. And so, I made already a couple videos. One was about who and what we are, and why. The second was about why we're here. And this video is going to explain about walk-in symptoms. Yes, walk-ins do experience symptoms after our walk-ins, some physical and some less physical, but still there. And so I'll explain that and explain what those generally are for most walk-ins, as well as what they were for me after my walk-in and how they came about and how they manifested. So, yeah, grab onto your seat and we're in for kind of a hairy and dicey ride. So let's get started. So, being a walk-in is not like being enlightened. Some walk-ins may reach a state of enlightenment sometimes or eventually, but when a body grows up with a soul and then the walk-in occurs and then another soul comes in, some walk-ins have it easier and don't even have much in the way of symptoms. They don't even notice that they had a walk-in. They just start having awakenings. And that's for like the soul braid and infusion and some jumper walk-ins and more lighter walk-ins that are like something else coming into the person and they still know who they are. But with exchange walk-ins, I think it tends to be more extreme, or tends to be more dramatic anyway. And so that's how it was with me as an exchange walk-in. I didn't go through a near-death experience. I didn't have to like crash and die and go to the hospital and be pronounced dead or be saved and seem to have a near-death experience or anything like that. And that's not how mine happened. How mine happened was that I was working a job at a grocery store. My walkout it was not very glorious. And indeed, it was even traumatic in some ways and times. And so actually for months, maybe a year or more, he was searching for other jobs to work that were more enjoyable or more respectful and easier on his body and health. And so for one reason or another, or probably a bunch of reasons, he didn't get hired anywhere else, and the job market is iffy anyway in America, it seems. Yeah, it's competitive at least. Anyway, he didn't get another job, but eventually he was called into a little back room where he'd never been, and he was laid off. And it was kind of a surprise to him. But then after it was explained why it wasn't so much of a surprise, he was just late too many times. Not that he did anything wrong, really. It was a policy thing anyway. So that was a bit of a shock that day. Then he didn't know what was going to happen. He didn't know where else to work, and he knew that he could go somewhere else, but he didn't have anything else set up. And so he was just kind of drifting, and that day was November 10th, 2020. And so it was only as he was leaving, maybe after he left the store, that he looked at the clock and realized the numbers of the date and realized that it was not happening by accident. It was not just something happening against him. It was probably for a good reason, because those numbers spell out 11122 when you simplify them and put them together. And so with all of his spiritual studies and explorations, he'd known enough about numerology to understand that those were very significant master numbers, and it's generally improbable, or it just doesn't make sense in his mind anyway, and in the universe, why that would happen on such a numerological day. And so, to the best of my memory and what I've been able to figure out, I came in as the walk-in on November 11th, 2022, while he was asleep that preceding night. And so here's some of how I figured out how I was a walk-in and the symptoms that I had. One of the symptoms that I noticed was that I started sleeping for 13-hour increments straight for like 3 to 5 nights, or kind of days and nights, but 13-hour sleep increments, which I had never done before. He had never done before anyway. And so that was, I believe, part of the adjustment process. So that was just one thing. Another more painful symptom was the headaches. And indeed, I still get them if I'm not careful. But one of the things that I thought was triggering the headaches at first was a blue light from computer screens and televisions and devices, especially bright blue light. I have pretty sensitive eyes. And yeah, I thought that was giving me headaches. Sometimes bright light still does, especially if I already have a headache, it makes it worse. But at this time, I'm not so sure that it was purely the blue light that was the cause of the headaches. I think it was actually for at least 3 weeks when I was job searching and trying to find other employment for money to live in this fascist capitalistic society. Yeah, it was because I was searching for a job on my computer for so long, so many hours a day sometimes. And I believe it was because my head was just arched forward, my neck was cramped, and a lot of stress was being put on my neck. And really what the headaches felt like is a vice grip squeezing my brain, or especially the center of my brain. And that lasted kind of off and on every day for about 3 weeks. And so I think that is consistent with what happens when you overstress your neck and the cerebral cervical vertebrae and nerves and all the stuff that's back there that's very sensitive, that should not be bent. So yeah, that was the headaches. I believe also part of the brain headaches were just like this part of my soul that was in my brain readjusting, or kind of trying to lower in frequency to the brain that was how it was at the time. And another symptom that happened with me is the memory bubbles, I guess I could call them, about every day for a while, for months, I think. I would just be going throughout my day, and usually in a relaxed state of mind, I would remember a very specific, sometimes vivid and visceral, and just usually specific, but usually not very relevant or important memory from my walkout's lifetime growing up or throughout his life. And so there was that, and that's part of the adjustment process. I have heard that from other walk-ins too, that seems to be a common thing. Yeah, then it took me about, I want to say 7 months from November of 2020 to about June of 2021 for me to actually start feeling like I belong in this body. And so that was just part of the integration process. But what happened before the integration process was another symptom in which my whole chest and energetic heart area felt like a complete void for the most part. And I did not have the same senses of love and affection that my walkout had before this shift and walk in. And so it actually lasted for, I think, at least a month or two, maybe three, a while anyway. I had to learn to love again. Interestingly, here's another tidbit. Some walk-ins, not all of them, but it's quite common for walk-ins to either separate from their partner or divorce after the walk-in. Sometimes even if they have a family, they just are a completely different soul, and so they have no real commitment or obligation with that person, and so they just separate and start a new life. That didn't happen with me. I was still kind of young, only 25, and still figuring out my life in this fascist capitalistic society. And yeah, I had this void in my chest, and I knew in some part of me that I didn't want to separate from my then girlfriend at the time, who actually, my walkout, it was interesting. There were some preparations he made. It seemed maybe subconsciously or without his knowing from my arrival, but he actually had bought the engagement ring. And so me as a walk-in, not fully awakened, was actually the one who went through with the proposal. And so I knew that I didn't want to just separate from my girlfriend of 6 years and then go somewhere else and start over and all that. It would have been difficult for me at the time anyway. I just had to learn to love her all over again. And so I did. And it's still a struggle as she's not the same soul and not quite on the same wavelengths as myself as a walk-in. But we have learned over time to coexist better and to cooperate better and resolve things. And that's part of marriage anyway. But that was one part of my walk-in that I think is unique, actually different from most other walk-ins. And so all this weird stuff was going on. I knew that I was different. I felt different. And actually, synchronistically, I was reading a book that was also written by a starseed walk-in. Her name is Jalila Star. And the book is called The Mission Remembered, which might kind of be the perfect interlude to my walk-in awakening. But yeah, it might be the perfect interlude to my walk-in awakening. And so it was while I was reading the last part of that book, actually, where Jalila was talking or describing walk-in symptoms, and one of them definitely is headaches and aches of the upper spine and neck and cerebral area. That's a common one for a lot of walk-ins, and she described all of the others, what I call memory bubbles or various other things, divorce, and so on. It was during reading that I was able to figure out, kind of start questioning in myself if I was a walk-in. At first, it was kind of odd to consider that. My walkout had actually heard of walk-ins many years before as a teenager. From the book Ruth Montgomery, Strangers Among Us. He had that book at one point, but he never read it because the concept was just too strange to really believe that someone who's grown up and even has a marriage or a family would just overnight, just like that, become someone else and then leave their whole family and start a whole new life and all that. And so, yeah, it was weird to consider that, but it did make sense considering what was going on. And so then, one thing that happens with walk-ins, and one thing that happened with me too, is you start to develop a different sense for cultures and maybe even foods, behaviors, as well as attractions to certain spiritual elements in life. And one of them for me was an awakening to Nordic paganism, which I'm still involved with because that has been still a very powerful life for me uh, centuries ago on this earth, as well as lifetimes in the Middle East and Egypt and various other areas. Talk about past lives and all that in another video. But yeah, generally about walk-in symptoms, a lot of them are painful and confusing, especially for I believe the exchange walk-ins that literally you are a different person. Now, this is one thing about exchange walk-ins, and I think all walk-ins really, um, but especially as exchange walk-ins who are a different soul. It's literally like we're reborn. And when I was going through these symptoms, it was a lot like I was reborn into like a dark night of the soul, in which then I had to actually grow, kind of like symbolically how a seed needs to be planted in the damp darkness of the earth and then be watered and sit there for a long time and then gradually open up a little bit and sprout and grow and see the sunlight after it reaches the soil and then gradually grow into a larger plant. That's a lot what it's like. And so I'll talk about more of my awakening in the next video. But generally, walk-in symptoms, bodily symptoms involve headaches. Sometimes there's changes in health conditions, either worsening or even healing spontaneously. You may begin to get a taste for different foods and food groups, or not even like certain foods anymore. Maybe you'll switch to something like vegetarianism or veganism if that resonates better with your energy. Um, that's up to you to decide and investigate. Some walk-ins actually grow a little bit after their walk-in, and I'm pretty sure I grew about half an inch actually after my walk-in. Um, People commented that I looked a little bit taller after my walk-in, and I did get measured, and it seems that I may have grown about half an inch from before at the age of 25, which is almost unheard of. So one of the other walk-in symptoms I want to share that I didn't go through or that didn't happen to me, but other people had this happen as a walk-in, and I know at least one by association. I've met a walk-in who's had this. Some walk-ins have their face literally morph and change, so it's still a good face and still like a human looking face, but it's just not the same facial structure and it doesn't look like the same face that that body was born with. And so that in those cases, of course, their family members notice and usually their friends notice too. Um, Sometimes it's dramatic. With Julia Starr's case, um, she said that her eyes changed, her eye color. I think they went from like brown or hazel to green or something like that. And her hair changed too. I think it went from blonde to like dark red or brownish or something. Um, Quite a difference. But yeah, that can happen with walk-ins. One thing that happened with me though that isn't so dramatic. I started developing a white hair streak here that is kind of visible on the top. It's more visible when my hair is hanging down with bangs, but yeah, that's been growing in since at least September of, I think it was 2021. Yeah, it must have been September 2021 that started growing in. So almost 2 whole years now that's been growing in, and that'll become complete and very noticeable at some point. It's called a Malin Streak. And then there's the memory symptoms. Some walk-ins lose their memories entirely. Some lose part of their memories. I didn't lose my walkouts memories, but I had to recall some to rejoin with his memory panel, and also Akash, and get my Akash and memories accustomed to this body. Yeah, then some people actually, like some 100% exchange walk-ins actually lose all memory of their family, practically. I've heard of that. And then sometimes they retain a little bit and have to like be shown photographs and explanations of who people are and what happened, what they've been through. Another one that I described was dissociation or loss of connection with the chest, and that's common. And spiritually, what happens with an exchange walk-in is you're either all of it or parts of your chakras from about the heart on up literally get stripped away with the walk-in. Usually it's a psychic surgery. It was for me. And then the walk-ins higher chakras need to get basically inserted or overlaid onto that and then gradually integrate. And so then, yeah, there's also a cultural awakening. You may start awakening to various other cultures that you didn't seem to care for before, or just heighten your frequency to get more involved with healing and learning about different kinds of medicine. Do your own investigation. It's different for everyone. You may also notice that your brain activity heightens and enhances, and your brain just doesn't seem to stop during the day. You're constantly working, and you may even start a business or two or three after your walk-in. And or some walk-ins also become nomads practically and don't really have a footing in this world because they're literally of a different dimension and world. And so they don't try to create a home. They're just kind of like drifting walk-ins that also experience the world. There's the excessive sleep symptom that I described that could happen, and I believe does for most of the more dramatic walk-ins. Perhaps a larger scale symptom that occurs is a dark night of the soul, and often that may last for months. It's not just a little dark night of the soul usually, but yeah, you'll probably suffer a lot as a walk-in. I know for a number of months after I came in and had to start working a security job at the time. And I just kept on waiting and waiting and looking at my somewhat miserable reflection in the mirror and kind of going through the motions of life in this capitalistic fascist society, and just waiting when I was going to awaken, waiting when the light is going to come. And so I pulled myself out of that mostly with an intensive and long amount of hypnotherapy, and learning to do that myself and administer that. That's another thing. it's not so much of a symptom, but a lot of walk-ins actually, I've heard, practice things like hypnotherapy, also in Reiki more recently, and that's an essential part of my practice and healing, and is kind of like helping bring together my walk-in healing knowledge from other star systems and lifetimes, um, kind of a complex understanding I know and feel of the mechanics and the workings of the energy body, as well as emotions and um, spirit, aura, even the cells and organs, and all of this stuff. Um, so I think that's a good segue into me explaining a bit about my business. My business that I started is called Being Hypnosis, and that's where I offer hypnotherapy services that resonate on this kind of higher level, that bring in information from spirit guides, angels, ancestors, various other spirits, some star beings, and other spirits around you. I often connect with them and sometimes channel them too in such sessions. Also, I can teach you how to literally just channel your oversoul and higher self, feel what it's like to have that energy um, enter into your body for some time and teach you. It doesn't always have, some parts of it don't always stay in your body. They have to still go out to the higher frequencies that don't belong here. So that's my hypnotherapy practice, to work on behaviors and habits, soul evolution, soul healing, past life healing, integration, walk-in integration, um, various things like that. So it can be just about anything that you need it to be. One thing I'll say about my hypnotherapy is that ever since the beginning, I've always connected with the quantum spirit realm. It just comes naturally to me, and I think from that I'm easily able to channel Reiki healing energy into the session, and also enter your subconscious inner landscape with you, and to walk you through that. And that's an essential part of the healing too, to go into that landscape and meet guides and wise figures, and meet objects and symbols, and even landscape features of your subconscious stuff that's in there, and even change it, transform it, burn it, create new things, use tools and all that. And so, yeah, with my Reiki too, I'm in my at least halfway done with my Reiki master teacher training. I've gone through Reiki 1 and 2. And so I feel energetically ready for the Reiki master teacher training. I just need to finish the certification and gain the master symbols. But anyway, with that, I call my practice Rainbow Reiki. That's the essential component. And for any star seeds and walk-ins who may be new to this planet, or even if you've been here for a while and you just need a tune-up or need some deeper healing, maybe some past life regression help, or anything, my Reiki can also be customized and tuned to starseed and interstellar and cosmic frequencies. And that's really what I've been doing, and what comes naturally for a while. And so that's beautiful. What I feel, one of the specific energy frequencies, or kind of unique ones, is come in with me, is a majestic energy frequency. And part of that, it doesn't have to be outward physical majesty. as you may imagine it anyway. But a lot of it is about the inner spiritual and behavioral, the less corporeal types of majesty. And with my Reiki too, I think it was a gift from the awakened yogi Sri Sai Baba, who is no longer living in a body on this planet. In July of 2023, when I actually had to go to the hospital for a collapsed lung from intense grief, one of my Reiki master friends sent me Reiki, and Sri Sai Baba showed himself to me and gave me a golden healing energy. And at the time, I thought it was just a nice golden frequency to help me replenish. But since then, I've really started to awaken to the actual energy frequency of gold. And it's so energetically delicious to me that I honestly just want to buy some pure natural gold jewelry soon. I'm trying to accumulate and manifest the money for that too, for the piece that's right for me. But so that's alchemy, literally alchemy, that with my Reiki energy healing I've been able to alchemize from that state 2 years ago of the dark night of the soul and the unawakened, very small, dim, faint, fearful, and messed up, wounded child self that I came into, wounded masculine, wounded lower masculine too, and now I've been able to alchemize into this state of gold frequency, and that's alchemy. So my website is newbeinghypnosis.com. If you want to reach me, I'm available there. I can offer hypnotherapy and or just pure Reiki services by distance or currently in the Seattle area. So you can reach me there. I'll be sure to link that up. Stay safe. Continue your investigations, healings, and awakenings. And I wish you well. And as a Syrian from the Starlight of Sirius, I see each and one of you as divine, majestic beings. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and please recommend this channel and share it, and all that earthly YouTube stuff. Bye for now.